Parmesan cheese going every which way. I've tried to have a ramen renaissance and it hasn't worked out. So I'm going to be giving up on that. I've run out of ramen and I've run out of Parmesan cheese, and I'm not going to get more of any for quite some time because it didn't work out. Between the indigestion and trying to make the ramen less like ramen by putting Parmesan cheese on it, then having the stuff go everywhere because I put too much on, it just didn't work out. So anyways, having a bit of a problem with dry lips tonight because the humidity broke. We went from feast to famine over here, so it's like really dry out. It's supposed to be down in the 50s tonight, whereas it had trouble getting into the 60s for Memorial Day weekend. So a little blast of summer, and I still got fans going that way. We'll see what it does with the sound when it's a little bit behind the camera and not exactly in front of the stereo mic on this thing. Let's get to talking about speakers here, because the monoprice ones came in. I haven't broken them in yet, so I'm probably going to leave them playing overclocked remix, the orchestral ones or something like that, while I'm off at work tomorrow, to just move the cone around, kind of break it in a little, and get the rubber moving back and forth and things like that. Just those little things. Something I wasn't thinking about when I hooked them up earlier. I was like, oh man, these sound terrible. I'm like, these are brand new. They probably haven't seen much action since leaving the factory. It's just the way things are. It's just the way things are with speakers nowadays. Whereas these things I've had since 2005. They've had plenty of time to flex and stretch and kind of get themselves to where they're going to be and all that lovely stuff. So, anyways, I went from Klipsch Pro Media with 3-inch mid basses. Basically, you either had a boomy subwoofer that would risk getting the cops called on you, or no bass at all. And what I wanted was an option on at least the front left and the front right to still retain some low end, but not shut it off completely. Enter the monoprice 10 532s. The 5¼ inch 100 watt per channel maximum bookshelf speakers that I'm now using for front left and front right. There's the other one right over there with the Onkyosat on top of it. Onkyosat's not hooked up, it's just there to have more speakers in the shot. As if I don't have enough of it already, so don't have enough of those things already. The interesting part about these cheapo speakers is that they can accept banana plugs, and they have a little port in the back. I'm not so sure about that. Might just stuff a sock in there or something like that. As far as the woofer goes, yeah, nothing too bizarre. It's got rubber though instead of foam. A little dome tweeter, but it's not metal like the ones in the Klipsch's were. These things, however, are a standardized cabinet. So if I want to mod these things, just got to figure out how to get into them, and I can do that. Probably here, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, and see what's in there for stuffing and things like that. Ooh, I can see the magnet if I look down the port like this. I can also hold them by using the port. Ooh, yeah, but it really tires out your wrist. Makes a little bit more sense to do this. But anyways, they do come with grills, and when you put something on, when you put these grills on here, you end up with a little black box. Very reminiscent, little cloth and everything, little black box, very reminiscent of a stereo from the 80s. I say the 80s specifically because if it was the 70s, this would be fake wood grain and stuff like that. I'm thinking like late 80s, wandering through Radio Shacks, seeing all kinds of what we would call shelf systems and whatnot, with 2 of these, and someone would play with the EQ, and I'd be like, those sound pretty good, we should get one. The thing is, my dad had a good sounding stereo system. It was just from the 70s. It had different color wood grain speakers and an 8-track instead of a cassette player. But so anyways, I hooked these things up prior to any break-in activity. These things sounded like their namesake, or what I've been talking about. Oh, by the way, yeah, there's nothing on the bottom of these things. I gotta get some rubber feet or something like that put on these so they don't scratch things up too much, hopefully. This desk is from the 80s, though. It's an Interroyal. It can handle it. So. Okay, so I hooked these things up, and the sound was, well, like their namesake, like a shelf system from the 80s. I still think there's a little bit of modding that I can do to try and squeeze some better sound out of these things. There's only so much you can do with cheap equipment, though, but it's fun to try. That's basically the way it is for those of us who just want to have entry-level plus and see what we can get out of it. But I was thinking about, since these do sound kind of like a stereo system from the 80s, I was thinking in terms of cheap boombox and things along those lines, although these would be slightly classier than boomboxes back in those days. But I was thinking about the Loudness War. Got me thinking about the Loudness War, and I've already talked about the Loudness War before, Loudness war, a lot of other people have talked about it too, but usually when people talk about the loudness war, they talk about it in terms of classic rock tracks getting absolutely destroyed because some studio engineer takes a classic rock song and destroys the dynamic range in order to make an iTunes-friendly version to sell in digital music services. And they'll call it digitally remastered, and people will listen to it and it'll be loud, loud, loud. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, except the originals would have more driving drum beats or certain parts louder than others to have more of an experience, as opposed to something that can sound okay through a terrible set of earbuds with a phone. I would say iPod, but I think iPods have given way to smartphones. So yeah, the stupid little mini jack to your things in your ears. Oh yeah, that's good sound, baby. Really? And so I was thinking about the loudness war and how we talk again and again, people talk again and again about the loudness war in terms of classic rock's been destroyed because of the loudness war. But you know what? The loudness war goes far beyond remastered CDs. It goes far beyond anything related to the music that we listen to. In a way, the stuff that powers the loudness war is drilled into our heads from a very young age. Basically, until you start learning some things about what good audio equipment sounds like, you have no chance of avoiding the loudness war. No, let's to go into some detail on this. It's a little late for me to be talking about these sorts of things, but to give some examples of this sort of thing, let's go to some of my experiences over the years, beginning with these speakers in the stores. Now, you'd walk into a Radio Shack or whatnot. Yeah, remember those back in the day? So, you would walk into a Radio Shack or department store and they'd have a shelf system. It'd be a big stereo with like record player on top, cassette decks, maybe CD if it was expensive. The compact disc was a rich person toy back then. MP3 wasn't even a twinkle in anybody's eye at the time. But you go and you would hear these systems, and basically what would happen is somebody would have gone in and messed with the EQ. There were little sliders for, to change the EQ on the stereo. They would have cranked them and whatnot, made these things sound as loud as they could. Really heavy low end, really heavy high end, not much in the middle. All highs, all lows, maybe not both. I don't know. I'm trying to have a little fun with the no highs, no lows. Holy, no lows, no highs, no lows. Holy crap! It must be both. Yeah, I'm having a little too much fun with that. But you stop and think about why those stereos in the department stores back in those days sounded the way they did. Was it because someone who knew what good sound sounded like tuned them up? No. Somebody was playing with the knobs like, that sounds good. And what exactly does good even mean? Let's go back to the very reason why audio and video technology exists. It's to recreate events that happened or are happening somewhere else. You get a good set of stereo speakers, you crank them up, and you listen to like a live album or something like that. You close your eyes and it's like you're at the darn show. You know? Now, studio equipment, studio recordings, people like to embellish. Artists like to take artistic liberties with that sort of thing and try and maybe embellish the live sound a little bit. But the ultimate root of all of this is get two speakers, close your eyes, and have it sound like you're at the concert with a band playing in front of you. That's what stereo is supposed to be. Then you go to the video side of things, get a television. This is showing you something that's happening somewhere else on a box in your living room. Well, nowadays it's a panel, like in the Back to the Future movies, one of the things they got right. So yeah, who knows what good sound even is anymore? Not very many people. And we are conditioned from when we are brought up as little kids to basically not care about sound being accurately reproduced. Instead, we like things to be as loud as possible. There's a lot of things that contribute to this. I mentioned radio broadcasts last time, if I remember right. Radio has a unique problem. You're broadcasting and you want people to tune in and stay tuned in. You want them to listen to you. What do you do when the equipment on the other end of the broadcast is a crappy PA speaker in the ceiling in a department store or something? What if somebody's listening on an alarm clock radio or streaming on a smartphone speaker? That'd be a better example for nowadays. What if somebody has just plain crap equipment on the other end of the transmission? How do you get past that? The way that AM and FM radio do that, and this is why, you know, you'd go to check out a speaker system in a department store, folks would tell you back in the day, don't let the store staff fire up an FM radio station, bring a CD that has the rest of the frequencies that FM drops out, and gets past the loudness issues of stuff coming out of a broadcast studio. Radio stations need to be heard by people with a wide range of equipment, including really crappy equipment. So the way you power through a crappy loudspeaker is to emphasize loudness as much as you can, so that at the same volume level, you're as loud as you can get without distorting. The problem is people hear too many of those broadcasts and they start to think that loud is good, and that's where it all begins. Fast forward a little bit. This has a woofer in it. So do most folks' trucks. Now, let's suppose you start out with the cheaper version of this. Suppose the tweeter didn't exist. You just have two little mid-range speakers, and that's it. You get sound, but that's about it. It doesn't sound all that great. Now, you move up to something that might actually have some low end to it. Now you can start feeling the sound coming out of the woofer or the subwoofer. Now you can start feeling your music. And this is where people's obsession with truck speakers comes from. Oh yeah, I'm going to jack the bass through the roof. There's probably a time, everybody who's got a big system in their truck, and they like to shake neighborhoods as they drive around. Everybody who's got one of those big systems, there's probably a time in their life when their speakers were only playing mid-range, and it wasn't music they could feel, so to speak. Then you have some of the hip-hop out there that's designed to be bounced in people's trucks. It's like, and this whole thing is just like, okay, it's funny when you hear a woofer for the first time when you're 12. Why don't you grow up? It's kind of funny, you know, the kids and their truck speakers, because we have our best hearing when we're the youngest. As we get older, our ability to hear the higher end of the spectrum drops. So ironically, at a time in our lives, so you talk about people playing with truck speakers when they're a teenager, like some of the folks I went to school with back in the day. Ironically, at the time in our lives when we can hear the widest range of sound, if you're playing with truck speakers for bass, and more bass, you only care about a tiny fraction of the sound in what you're listening to. Not only that, but you care about the part that you can listen to as you get older. Not the full experience, which you are best equipped to hear when you're that age. And it gets worse as you get older. Now, I did a test the other, I think I'm down to about 16,000 hertz at the top end. I'm not 20 to 20,000 hertz anymore. It'll get worse by the time I'm 50. So, and it's the same thing for all of us. It's the way our inner ear is designed. The things that, you know, register the sound that handle the highest frequencies are closest to where the sound's coming in. So those go first. And as a matter of fact, there's some very creepy videos on YouTube that say, you know, make note of when you can start hearing a sound. They'll do a sweep from 20 kilohertz downwards. And then they'll say, if you first heard a sound between this and this, you're probably in your 20s, you're probably in your 30s, you're probably in your 40s, and it's usually accurate. Unless you did some damage to your ears at some point earlier in your life, it's accurate. So this whole obsession with bass when we're hearing big woofers for the first time, it's so weird when you stop and think about it. We're at the time in our lives when we can hear the entire sound spectrum, the best that we'll ever be able to hear it, and we've got so many young people that are obsessed with the low end, which is what they'll be able to hear even as they get older. And take the time to enjoy being able to hear. Well, it's not like 20,000 hertz is anything exciting. It's kind of like dog whistle, but whatnot. But, you know, you lose your ability to hear the higher frequencies as you get older. You think you want to enjoy it while you could when you were young, but that's not what happened in my school days. It was always bass, and more bass. And it's the loudness war. It's one element of it. So radio broadcasts are obsessed with loudness. You have the truck woofer thing. Oh yeah, my music shakes the block. Does that ever get old? I mean, when you've been doing it for like 20 years, when you're 35 years old or something like that, and you're shaking the block in like some Buick or something, because you're driving older people cars now, but you're still putting woofers in the back. Does it get... I'm trying to imagine a Buick with a subwoofer now, and it's freaking hilarious. I gotta find somebody who's willing to do that now. Drive like some old lady Cadillac with big... No, wait, some of the rappers do stuff like that. Never mind. How about a Volvo? Yeah, Volvo with a bass system. There we go. That's something to crack up about, maybe. The stupid Volvo station wagon shook the block. That idiot needs to turn down his stereo. You got me thinking about it now, man. Then I'm the one that said it. What am I saying you for? It's something I did. It's my fault. Yeah, anyways. So, as soon as I can stop thinking about Volvos shaking the neighborhoods, we can continue. Anyways, loudness war. But that's the thing. We're groomed from when we're little to think that louder is better, instead of an accurate, faithful reproduction of the sound from the recording. The setup where we can have two of these, not the ones on the bottom, not the ones on the top, two full, two bookshelf speakers cranked with our eyes closed and feel like we're at a concert. With a live album, anyways. But that's the thing. A lot of people talk about the loudness war in terms of, oh, this classic rock song got ruined by the loudness war. It goes far beyond that. The roots of the loudness war are something that we're exposed to from the time we're little. And then there's, of course, the whole thing where you have a set of, again, mid-range speakers. This is all you have for sound. Then you start hearing something that can do something besides what your little mid-rangers can do. And it could be on the high end as well. I mean, how many speakers sound good, so to speak, by cranking the high end and the low end and leaving nothing in the middle? That's what good sounds like the rock preset on old school Winamp. Cut out the middle. I was just reading an article by an audiophile. Took a pair of crappy Logitech Z313s, those terrible little Target special $40 gigs with the like 12-watt subwoofer. And I use that term very loosely because it's a stupid little boombox woofer in an echoey wooden box. Ooh. Real subwoofers are at least 8 inches. Laws of physics. Anytime you see one of those stupid little narrow subwoofers, it's probably going to be a little on the boomy side, but that's another discussion entirely. But yeah. He took one of those terrible little multimedia computer speaker sets, and he was like, what does Logitech have against 400 to 900 hertz? Because there was EQ hard-cooked into the amplifier, or hardwired into the amp, to cut out the mid-range on a system that theoretically should have handled from a moderate amount of low end to a moderate amount of high end. There were no tweeters, and the pathetic excuse for a subwoofer is more like a boombox woofer in an echoey wooden box. But the problem is, there's people out there that think that one of those sounds good. I went to college with some guys with the Cambridge Soundworks little cube with a so-called subwoofer that was the same size as the woofers in one of these things. A little 5-inch subwoofer in an echoey box, not unlike this, except this one has a tweeter, and it's actually wired to do high-end, not just LFE. But they thought their Cambridge Soundworks with a little bit of bass that could thump, thump, thump a bit, but not really make things fall off the shelves, they thought that that was good sound. And again and again, we see the sound enhancers, like the bass boost on the CD players and whatnot back in the day. And all the so-called sound enhancers. They jack the lows and the highs and cut the mids. Because make it as loud as possible without distorting. I don't know. It could also be the case that mid-range is associated with crappy sound, because if all you have, cover up the tweeter once again, is little mid-ranges, that's entry level. Once you can start doing really high or really low, that's apparently better sound, so to speak. So if you can take a mid-range and EQ it to have a lot of low and a lot of high, even if it loses a bunch of stuff in the middle, then that's good sound. It's a loudness war. Make it as loud as possible at the same volume level. Make it sound like a big stereo, even if it's a little mid-range. Basically, nothing at all related to the reason why audio technology exists in the first place. To recreate something that happened somewhere else, audio-wise, with little boxes on your desk, or on the floor, or in the ceiling, or in your car. It's a loudness war. And it goes far beyond all those videos that talk about, this classic rock song got ruined by loudness war idiots. It's kind of something we're socially conditioned into. And until you wake up and start reading up on some audiophile stuff and hanging out with some people that actually have some real gear and not just Logitech plus. Hey, my high-end computer speakers can shake the room. That's good sound. Look, they're THX certified. Until you break away from the mold, you have no chance. Society is going to condition you to be, number one, highly subjective, two, highly dogmatic, and three, highly ignorant about what accurate sound reproduction is. So, just some things I'm thinking about. I'm going to break in these speakers as best as I can and see if I can tune things to make them adequate replacements for the Klipsch's. They have some big shoes to fill, though. I mean, these things were basically, I think, Klipsch reference series downsized into computer speakers. So these are actually based on a bigger line of Klipsch speakers. So way more expensive, way outside my price range too. But this is probably my first and last Klipsch product that I'll ever own. The Pro Media Ultra 5 ones. Well, no, it's not my first, but it'll be the last one. I did have the 4-point ones beforehand, but I think I'm done with Klipsch after this. Outside my price range for the so-called real audio stuff. It's something to think about. The loudness war goes far beyond, that classic rock song got ruined by a bunch of people that wanted to make it friendly for iTunes. I hope this gets the old gears turning. Time for me to call it a night. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.